Hello, I'm Gus Downing, publisher and editor of the D&D Daily. On today's edition of the LP News Network, we have Bill Titus with us, the Vice President of Loss Prevention for Sears Holding Corporation. And first, we'd like to congratulate Bill on his being recognized this evening for all the work he's done with the NRF as the LP Advisory Council Chairperson from 2009 to 2011. Congratulations, Bill.
Thanks, Gus. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. But let's start off at the beginning. Last year in the Daily, we did a Friday focus on you that basically went over your entire background. Can you give our viewers a feel for the first 14 years in your career? You know, why you came into retail and your experience at Ward's?
Well, I hope not my whole background, but I think like a lot of people of my generation, we kind of stumbled into retail rather than made a deliberate choice into it. I was going to be in retail for 6 months while I pursued my career of being a hospital administrator. And I won't tell you how many years later, I'm still there and loving it. Montgomery Ward was just a phenomenal place to learn and grow. I didn't start off in loss prevention. I started off in the controller organization. That was back in the times when you didn't have cash registers that were pick up the data and send it upstream, and all of the reports you were doing, the accounting, the inventory control, and all of that at store level. So we were really the accountants for the enterprise. So I learned an awful lot from that position. I moved into a district level position as a controller, managing a group of stores. Then I got my first opportunity to see wonderful blustery Chicago, and came back to the corporate headquarters as a retail accounting specialist.
Now, how long did you spend before you got to corporate?
It was about 7 years.
So you spent 7 years in the stores as a controller.
Yes.
Learning the numbers.
Learning the numbers and learning all of the processes that were involved in operating the store. I actually had a 6-month stint where I was also the operations manager in the store. So you learn a lot about the expense control and a lot about managing those bottom lines.
And you weren't in loss prevention at that time?
No, not at all. I worked closely with loss prevention because one of my primary responsibilities was shortage control, and working in conjunction with, at that time, I think it was called security, then it went to protection, then it went to loss prevention. That was kind of the progression of thought that I think that went through in that discipline.
So they took you to corporate after 7 years?
After 7 years.
And what was the position?
It was retail accounting specialist.
Okay, there you go.
And my first piece was I was responsible for the accounts payable department. So all of the things the stores did or needed done that would help them with their accounts payable, that was my responsibility. I moved then into handling point of sale in the same kind of role.
How did that transition go for you from moving to corporate, from moving to the field, going to the corporate office? What was that like?
Honestly?
Please.
Not well. Actually, I didn't have anybody mentoring me. I didn't have anybody advising me as to really how to enter the corporate environment. So I had a few missteps. But you learn. I am a great learner by observing. And I started figuring out what it was to work in the corporate environment and how to gain impact through developing, strong partnerships.
And how many positions did you hold at corporate office?
Oh, geez.
At Ward's, that is?
At Ward's. I had the retail accounting specialist job. I then went down to a subsidiary we had called Jefferson Ward's, and I was an assistant controller down there. Came back corporately as a manager of the loss prevention shortage control. And that was my first kind of transition into loss prevention, doing exactly what I wanted to do, what I loved, which was about shortage control.
But what brought you into the loss prevention community? What brought you into that profession, so to speak, or this profession?
It was the opportunity to get involved in managing the shortage control for a large corporation. It was a phenomenal opportunity for me.
And how many years did you spend at Ward's at the corporate office?
7 more years.
So it was
Well,
a total
actually,
14?
not 7 years, about 5 years. And then I went out to the field as a regional loss prevention manager. It's one of those things that you and I have talked about before, which is sometimes you have to take a lateral move to develop your career to get the things you needed to do. And that was absolutely what I needed to do. So I went out into the field, not as a tenured loss prevention manager, but one that really needed a strong team around it to help coach and develop. And I've learned how to work with teams and have them help me grow.
Sure. So when you went out to the field as a regional with no loss prevention experience, but yet expected to manage that loss prevention group, I mean, how did you do? I mean, what was the key to your success? How did you get through it?
Well, I think the primary thing is that I listened, I talked, I asked for input. How would you go about this? What would be the best way to do this? I certainly knew all the numbers, all the statistics. I knew what moved those things. What I didn't really truly understand was what I call the dark side of loss prevention, which was all of the interview, interrogation, investigative methodologies, all of the exposure that comes with managing the external theft component of the business.
And I would imagine then that you relied heavily on the LP folks in the field to kind of carry the ball for you and show you those examples and such.
Absolutely, but I did learn. I am a fast learner. And it's interesting, though, a number of those folks that took me under their wings are actually working with me now.
So you spent 14 years at Ward's.
14 years at Ward's.
And TJ Maxx calls.
Yes, knock, knock.
And you join him as the LP director,
Yep.
not with his shortage control title, not with any of that responsibilities per se, when there were only 150 stores, so they were still kind of a fledgling, and they were about ready to explode. And you moved to Boston, from California, Chicago to Boston.
Right.
So we've crossed the states a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. So tell us, how was that transition? How did you manage it? I mean, this is the first time you've left Ward's. You're outside of your comfort zone. You're managing a whole group now that, quite frankly, you'd only spent a few years with. Talk about that transition and how you accomplished that and how you approached it, if you could.
Well, it's an interesting transition. By the way, I did have shortage control as a responsibility.
Okay, there you go.
Under there. You know what? I think I used the model that I developed when I moved into the regional slot, is really taking the time to listen and talk to people and understanding what my customer wanted, understanding what the loss prevention team needed in the way of development, and what the resources were that we put to bear and what the results were, and what could we do as a team to benefit the customer and benefit the corporation. And really that's what I just started focusing on and driving. But all the time, the most important thing that I was doing was around people. And that's really the key thing that I learned at TJ Maxx. TJ Maxx was an absolute new world for me when it came to people and how you impacted them and how you developed them. And I happened to have a great coach there that helped me through this.
And who was the coach?
It was Arnold Barron. He was probably one of the best managers that I've ever had. He was an individual that really did a great job of coaching and developing, and wasn't afraid to give me feedback, but yet really helped push me into areas that I might have been uncomfortable with. And he was really a great leader in that way.
So how many stores did you open with TJ's before you left? Where did they go to?
Well, I have to share with you, my first meeting at TJ Maxx was with Ben Camarada and the other senior leaders, Dick Lesser and such, and the conversation was around, we're at 150 stores, everything is blowing up on us, all of the controls, HR, systems, should we stop the expansion, get this under control, and move on? And
because of shrinkage potential.
Shrinkage potential, the human element of it, the IT systems piece of it, the logistics flow of it. But the rest of the story is we didn't stop that growth and continued to build that organization. And when I left, There were something like 700 stores when we left, and that was a fun time. I spent 12 years there.
You were really their first LP director. They had a couple before you, but in essence, they were only for a few years, couple of years. I mean, you were really the guy that gave birth to the loss prevention program at TJ Maxx.
Well, I think when you talk about it, it's like the progression we had talked about, going from security to protection to loss prevention, as we did in Montgomery Ward. We just took a different or broader look at loss prevention at TJ Maxx, rather than, it wasn't about catching the bad guys. It was really around what is the return that the company's investment of the resources in loss prevention, should be providing. And certainly it should be great shortage control, it should be great safety results, and it should be in helping the customer to shop our stores safely and to ensure that they have access to the merchandise, because sometimes we can kind of over-respond to that.
Now, you really brought that shortage control piece to TJ's, into that loss prevention group.
Yes.
I mean, that was the element that you brought into that equation that, quite frankly, they didn't have. How was that transition for the LP folks?
I think whenever you're doing something that you think you're successful in doing, and somebody comes in and says, we want to change, there's an uncomfortableness with that, always. Because if you think that what you're doing is making you successful, and then somebody comes in and says, well, no, we really need to add this, or we need to change this, you really have to be good in change management with the team to help them understand why making that change is important. Then the second piece is you have to give them the skill sets. So you can't just change the rule of the game and say, all right, now you're responsible for shortage control, and they go, okay, tell me what that means. All right, you got to give me the skill set. So we did a lot of training, a lot of getting feedback from them about what was working or not. Spent a lot of time in the field with them, showing them what it looked like when it was working, and helping them understand what the next steps they needed to do. And quite honestly, that's where I really learned about situational leadership. And it was very task specific, and that applied so well in helping that transition from really the more security oriented loss prevention to a true loss prevention organization.
Did you find many executives that were resistant to this, that didn't really take to the shortage control side of the business?
Well, I can share with you.
I had to ask.
Well, I don't know if it was resistance or whether it was really a lack of understanding of what the benefit was that we could bring to them. And I'll give you a great idea. Dick Lesser, who at the time was the chief merchant in the organization, I met with him during my orientation, and I was talking to him about the types of things that we would do. And he said, well, you and I probably won't spend any time together. So here I am, bringing in what I think are great steps that's going to help his margin and stop the erosion. And so I had a lot of work to do. My team had a lot of work to do to help the rest of the executive team in the company understand the benefits.
And how about the shrinkage results? I mean, how did that prove over those years that you were there?
We ended up having phenomenal shrink results.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And the company, this is an interesting thing, when you start getting those results and you say, give me this resource and trust me with this resource, and here's the return that I'm going to get for you, and you consistently provide those returns, then you can continue to expand the impact of the program, and that's what happened at TJ's.